Measuring Engagement in Extensive Reading, a survey-based quantitative study.
Hi, my name is Barry Grossman. I've created an animation about the research that was conducted on extensive reading. So sit back and enjoy.
The study discussed here is an attempt to tease out some motivational variables of engagement for two parameters, individual versus group decision-making within the extensive reading process. In other words, does collaboration affect the quality of engagement with extensive reading activities? The literature concerning extensive reading is broad, and numerous studies focus on different aspects of engagement and motivation, such as types of goals, goals related to intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, learner attitudes, learner accountability, and learner enjoyability. In the quotation below, Dornier is perhaps warning us that motivation is indeed a multifaceted rather than a uniform factor, and no available theory has yet to represent it in its total complexity. This implies that researchers need to be particularly careful when conceptualizing and assessing motivation variables, and should be well aware of the fact that the specific motivation measure or concept they are focusing on is likely to represent only a segment of a more intricate psychological construct. Fenton Smith stated that although extensive reading is now widely accepted as an effective way of improving learners' L2 proficiency, there is less agreement on the best ways of implementing it in the classroom. Results by Rozelle and Brown suggest that both individually and collaboratively chosen readers and activities have benefits in a Japanese extensive reading curriculum. This multivariate account of motivation is supported by Day and Bamford, who propose 4 contributing elements to reading attitude: L1 reading attitudes, previous L2 reading experiences, attitudes to the L2 and the related culture and people, and L2 classroom environment. These results are in line with Kubota, who argues against an overall dichotomy of Eastern versus Western, in other words, group versus individual, learning strategies often found in applied linguistics literature. He says, new knowledge constructed by alternative research perspectives has begun to challenge the myths of Japanese education. This critique of cultural differences suggests that ESL teachers and researchers critically examine cultural differences rather than take them as unquestionable truths. In other words, individual Japanese students are not all motivated in the same way, even though their group-oriented educational backgrounds may be similar. The research presented here helps clarify the discussion of individual versus group extensive reading curricula by identifying and analyzing individual and group-oriented motivational factors of participant engagement in reading, selecting, and discussing within an ER curriculum. This 10-week project consisted of 3 parts: 1, language level testing and a pre-reading questionnaire; 2, reader activities and questionnaires; and 3, a post-reading questionnaire. During the 6-week period of reader activities, the students read 1 book per week, which was chosen individually or by the group on alternate weeks, so that the participants read 3 individually chosen books and 3 group chosen books in total. All participants were first-year nursing majors at a small private university. There were 74 total participants. However, 12 had incomplete surveys. Thus, there was a final total of 62 final participants at an 84% completion rate. All student participants agreed to participate in the study by way of written consent. The online reading repository and learning management system called X-Reading was used in this study. A paired samples t-test was conducted to gauge levels of engagement for individuals and groups in 3 dimensions of activity: selection, reading, and discussion of online readers. There were 4 dimensions of engagement that were measured: interest, enjoyment, effort, and concentration. Thus, 12 dimensions were investigated: the student's interest, enjoyment, concentration, and effort within each of the activities: selecting a book, reading a book, and discussing a book. These were analyzed for group work as well as individual work. The weekly engagement questionnaires all employed a 6-point Likert scale, from strongly disagree to strongly agree, with no neutral option. The participants' English level was assessed using a test that included a reading passage based on a news article, true and false questions, synonym matching, and phrase matching. The participants were divided into 3 groups depending on their test results. The first group, with 20 participants, had a score of up to 15 correct answers. The second group, with 34 participants, had between 16 and 21 correct answers. And the final group, with 20 participants, had between 22 and 28 correct answers, 28 being the perfect score. The mean of the scores were 17.5. Participants were put into homogeneous groups of 3 or 4, depending on their test results. The procedures for the study were strictly controlled. Each participant would individually or collaboratively in their group choose a book. This was an activity. The book was read for homework. Then they would fill out a questionnaire about the selection process. In the following class, after having read the book, they would fill out a questionnaire based on the reading. Finally, they would have a discussion that was exactly 5 minutes long. After the discussion of the book contents, there was a questionnaire about that discussion. The procedure was followed strictly throughout the study for 6 weeks. At the beginning of each class, students filled out a reading questionnaire based on the contents of the book they read. Then, in their groups, they would have a discussion about the book's contents. After the discussion, they would complete a discussion questionnaire, asking them about the experience of the discussion. Next, the group would choose a new book, or individuals would choose a new book. Finally, based on the experience of that selection, they would complete questionnaires on the selection process. For the 62 complete datasets, a paired samples t-test was conducted to gauge statistical probability. Furthermore, because the questionnaires were repeated over 6 weeks, a Bonferroni correction was also implemented at the 99% confidence level. For the data, the mean, standard deviation, significance, and Cohen's d were calculated to uncover significant results. SPSS for Mac, as well as the online calculator for Cohen's d was implemented in this study. Significance was found for 3 variables. A medium effect was found in the discussion concentration variable, and small effects were found in the discussion enjoyment as well as the selection enjoyment variables. All of the results were skewed in the individual direction, suggesting that students were more engaged in these 3 variables when working individually. In other words, when students worked alone, they deemed their concentration level better during the discussion. They also deemed their enjoyment level higher during the discussion and their enjoyment level higher during the selection process. When data from the end of study questionnaire was analyzed, significance was found only in the discussion dimension. Notice the negative association, suggesting that participants were more engaged in discussion when the readers were chosen by the group compared to readers chosen individually. Notice also that this contradicts the results previously reported for the weekly questionnaires, namely, that students found their concentration and enjoyability were greater during discussions when working individually. In a nutshell, it can be said that looking at the data for the weekly questionnaire results, first-year university nursing students in Japan who choose readers individually will likely be more concentrated and enjoy the activity more when discussing their reader with other students. Therefore, when participants select readers individually, they enjoyed the discussion slightly more. But when they select readers as a group, they enjoy the selection process more. The book selection process results may point to motivational factors in which group negotiation to decide the fate of the group, in other words, democratic rule, was considered enjoyable. However, in the discussion of book content, each participant not knowing the other's content, in other words, new information, provided enjoyment, lending evidential support for the popularity of information gap type activities. Participants were asked to fill out 3 questionnaires during each 90-minute class, each questionnaire having an average of 18 questions. This averages out to 1 questionnaire every 30 minutes for 6 weeks. This, coupled with the physical age of the participants, all teenagers, along with the extremely hectic schedules of the nursing department imposes on students, might have led to apathy when filling out weekly and end of study questionnaires, resulting in data that is perhaps not completely accurate. Overall, the lack of large or very large effects for all variables does not in itself discount the data, nor should it be disheartening. The data indicating significance, even though effect sizes range from medium to small, are an indication that there is a possible relationship between engagement and individual group reading choices for these variables. Further investigation is needed, perhaps with a larger sample or a longer term study, or different engagement or motivational variables, and or more different precise psychometric tools. The social sciences face many challenges due to the constant variance of subject, experimenter, and environment. But reliance on the scientific method remains a constant reassurance that researchers are getting closer to a consensus on valid theories of learner motivation. The future will likely see neuroscience and social science cooperate more fully in order to objectively observe the effects of teaching methods on the neural functioning of the subjects. Admittedly, this is also not as straightforward as it seems, due to the multifunctionality and plasticity of the brain. But there will hopefully come a time when all educational theories, methods, and techniques will be based on neuroscientific evidence for the majority of the learner population. Until that time, social science continues to improve its research methodology and add to the ever-increasing amount of data collected on the intellectual and emotional psychology of learners. It is my hope that the results of this study spur further research into the relationships between English teachers and quantitative methods of research, extensive reading, student engagement, and motivation in EFL contexts. Thank you for watching this